Uh, my uh, my main work is around working with teachers, making sure that they're supported, making sure that we are actually researching things that work, and then making sure that those things actually find their way into the classroom so that it doesn't just kind of we write an article and then nobody actually utilizes them. So really excited to have you here today. And really a lot of our work is if you're if you really are into improving teacher practices, it's a lot, right? And you sometimes don't know where to start, and there's a lot to unpack. But what we're going to discuss today is something that impacts a child's cognitive development, their language development, their concept development, even classroom management and relationship building. And that is, yeah. I added some, it took me 15 minutes to add that sound effect, but I really felt like it was worth it. I saw half a smile from Marnie. Really teacher-child discourse and teacher-child conversations, that back and forth conversation. So a lot of research showing that if you want to impact all of these things, while there's so much that we can focus on in the classroom, a major thing that would impact changes almost immediately is really looking at teacher language. But teacher language is complicated. There's so much to that language. And so we'll unpack a lot of it today. I want to show you a video of a conversation between a teacher and a child. And we're going to revisit that video at the end after we look at the components of language. So right now it might sound just like a conversation with a teacher. You might be able to pick up on some elements, and then we'll unpack some of the language tools she might be using or actually not using sometimes in this conversation, and then we'll revisit this video again.
Oh, is it raining? Is it raining today? Yeah. I think it's going to rain today. I wonder if it's raining now. No. No, you don't think so? I think it might be. I think it might be raining. It is raining. She's gonna have some cake. Why are you sad? Are they happy? They should be happy. Now it's snowing. Not raining. Is it raining? Was I right? It was raining. Find the rain again. Can we find the rain? Let's see. Are you scared of the thunder? Yeah. Oh, is it raining?
Right, there's so much going on in that conversation. They're talking about the weather, the teachers asking about the weather, about a video that they're watching about weather. And so it's really hard to kind of listen in on a conversation. There's always so much talk. And how do we elevate that level of conversation? So how do we make it so that it's not just like a basic, what is that? Or what color is that? And how do we elevate it to higher order types of conversation? In order to do that, today we'll unpack some of the key components of language that you can utilize yourself as educators, or if you're working with teachers, to whenever you're giving feedback, it's very helpful to give them a framework for what they should be doing, how they should be talking, but instead of saying or even saying to yourself, I'm going to improve teacher language. What is teacher language? What does that mean? We'll start off with something really simple it's kind of the holy grail of early childhood. You walk into any early childhood class and they're doing this. They're doing repetition. You've ever walked in a classroom and you heard it in the video as well. A child will say something like, the car is fast. And the teacher will say, yeah, the car is fast, right? I went to grandma's house. Yeah, you went to grandma's house. Oh, it's sunny outside. Oh yeah, it's sunny outside. And that is called repetition. And while that's very, very important for early childhood, it shows children that you're listening. It helps them rehear their words and their ideas back again. And sometimes it restates it in a way that's clearer and a clearer speech for other children to hear as well. I observed a teacher for an hour and heard 37 times of repetition. It's one of the most commonly used ways of engaging children. But repetition is just that. You're just going to repeat something that the child says, but it's not adding to it. So the other form of language you want to hear on top of repetition is extension. So ask yourself, if a child says to you, oh, the car is fast, what more information can you give that child? You can repeat it, but what about the car can you add? So you can definitely repeat, the car is fast. And repetition could be, oh, the car is fast. Oh, I see the wheels spinning really, really fast. Maybe that's why it's going really quickly. So while I repeated the child's observation of the car is fast, now I've introduced language around wheels and it's spinning, and I'm showing an observation. In about an hour of classroom observations with that same teacher, she only extended the talk just one time. I mean, twice. And so it's underutilized in the classroom. And by pointing out to educators that they're really listening to their repetition and how many times they extend, you'll see that they're catching themselves. I've heard with educators even recording themselves saying, I didn't realize how much I was just repeating children. I was just repeating what they were saying, and how much they can take that language into the next level.
Can you show?
Let's try it together. I'll give you a scenario. And this is repetition. And then you'll see if you were working with a child and a child says this to you, what would you say as an educator to extend that, right? So the original example is the car is fast. Yeah, the car is fast. That's repetition. Extension is the car is fast. Yeah, and I see the wheels spinning. What more information can you give? So in this scenario, a child is pointing at a porcupine, and it says, oh, it's pointy. And you repeat, oh yeah, it's pointy. How can you extend that language as well? So write in the chat, what's something that you would say to the child that you would add on to their observation?
Right into the chat, or you can even unmute yourself if you'd like.
Small group. Yep, right. Ooh, the question asking, right? So I'm hearing here, it's prickly like a cactus. Look at that rich vocabulary. Instead of just repeating what the child already knows, which is a very common tool. Yeah, it's really pointy, right? All of a sudden you have prickly like a cactus. Debbie's even asking a question, and we'll talk about the importance of question asking and the types of questions that we can be doing. So telling your teachers or working with teachers as yourself, having them even be cognizant of how many times they're using repetition and then introducing them to extension, you'll see that there's an increase in extension. The other types of language you want to see in the classroom is self and parallel talk. So self-talk, now parallel talk has a different definition. This is self and parallel talk as it pertains to teacher language. So self-talk is teachers talking about themselves and narrating what they are doing. We're constantly doing this as teachers so that we can take our inner thoughts and share them with with children. And that allows them to kind of hear our inner conversation so that they can have similar thoughts as well. So like, oh, I'm going to put this together. Oh, it feels really bumpy. Oh, okay, I'm going to put this right here next to the brown cup. All right. And then you're constantly using and exposing that vocabulary. Parallel talk is also when the teacher narrates the child's action. So we want teachers to get in the habit of not just narrating what they're doing, but also narrating what the children are doing. And that might make their actions more transparent and also increase teacher-child conversation. I went back. The other one I want to talk about is something called frequent conversation in the classroom. And that requires children to talk to other children. A lot of times and a lot of studies focus on teacher-child talk. But also when we talk about conversation, how is the teacher nurturing children talking to other children in the classroom? When you go into classrooms, observe how many times children are actually talking to other children and not just talking to themselves. And how is the teacher connecting the children talking to themselves? One of the great tips I like to give teachers about that is making sure that we are giving them cues that we want them to talk to each other. And sometimes we're telling them the opposite. What do I mean by that? A lot of times, and listen to teachers or even listen to yourself as you're talking to children, you'll say things like, oh, tell me what you see in this book. Who can tell me what the weather looks like outside? When you're telling children to tell you something, even if there's a group of children there, you are giving them the message that the conversation has to go through you. And one of the things I love to do with teachers is actually have them draw out like an arrow every single time a child talks to them, and then a little visual or tally mark every single time a child talks to another child in a conversation. They will realize that children are sitting on the rug or sitting in a conversation area and they're talking to the teacher most of the time. So getting in the habit of saying things like, tell us what you're thinking. Tell the child sitting next to you what you're thinking. And so not only does that benefit a child and a teacher having a conversation, but it pulls other children into the conversation as well. Listen to this classroom where children are playing and talking to each other about a certain topic.
No, ponelo aquí porque puede ser una polla pelota. Debes enrolar.
Right. They're having this conversation, they're trying to figure something out, they're doing something together. So listening in on how much the children are talking to each other as well is another component of nurturing conversations in the classroom. Now, we talked a lot about what teachers are saying. This part is talking about what teachers should not be saying. Just sometimes it's okay to not say anything, and that is wait time. A lot of you are probably already familiar with wait time. It's something that's commonly taught in teacher education programs, professional development, and it's the idea that when you ask a question or you approach a child, you have to wait a little bit before you move on or select a child to talk. So what does this sound like? If I say something like, hey, what did you do this weekend? Immediately in every classroom, one hand is going to go up, right? It could be Avery. I'm like, hey, Avery, what did you do this weekend? And then immediately Avery's talking and me and Avery are going back and forth. With wait time 1, there's a gap that's introduced between a teacher's question and the first child who's talking. So instead of that sounding like, what'd you do this weekend? And then I'm like, oh, Avery, and I pick on Avery, it'll sound like this. What'd you do this weekend? I'm waiting. It doesn't have to be silent. It's just as long as we're waiting. Think about what you did. Did you go anywhere? Right. And that increases the gap between that. And we'll talk about the benefits in a second. Now, what most people ignore and they focus on wait time 1 and they ignore something called wait time 2. It's not usually taught as often, but it's just as important, and it's really prevalent in the research. Wait time 2 is the time between the child's answer and the teacher's response. So what does this sound like? What'd you do this weekend? Now, if I wait time 1, 2, 3, oh, Avery. And then Avery shares, oh, I went to grandma's house. The second Avery says I go to grandma's house, my instinct to be like, oh, what'd you do at grandma's house? Oh, tell me about grandma's house, right? Oh, did you? And I'm talking constantly. With wait time 2, I'm going to increase the gap between what Avery says and what I say back to Avery. So it'll sound like this. What'd you do this weekend? Think about what you did. Did you go anywhere? Avery? Oh, I went to grandma's house. And then I wait. What you'll find is that when you wait after a child has given you the first sentence of information, is that the child will actually elaborate on what they just said, right? Because you've given them extra time for them to think. So instead of saying, I went to grandma's house, she has a new dog. The dog is white and it goes really fast. So that's what we're seeing. With wait time 1, we see 30% decrease of children just saying, I don't know. Because when there's no wait time, the child that doesn't know how to answer fast, their instinct is just to tell you, I don't know, right? And then you've worked with children like that, right? And they're like, I don't know, right? Because unless you know immediately, it's considered that you don't know. And that we create a culture like that in the classroom of, I'm going to pick the first child who talks. I'm going to pick the child who says something immediately. And so the other kids are not given a chance to talk. When you increase wait time and just increase it by 2 more seconds, different learners join the conversation. Children think about things in greater depth so that they can their answer is actually more robust and deeper. And there's actually a decrease in behavioral issues, right? If I'm not part of this conversation because you don't give me enough time to join it, I'm just going to go find out what's going on over there, right? I'm going to tune you out. But if you give me some time to think and I can go back and forth this conversation, then I am more embedded into that conversation. With wait time too, that is the time between my answer and the teacher's response, the child's answer and the teacher's response. We see that children are able to elaborate 300 to 700% of their answer, right? They give less one-word answers. They give less of that one quick answer. They're elaborating more. Other children join the conversation while they're doing it. And it's also a time for teachers to think about their own response. I'm going to show you a messy cubby. This is actually, you know what? I went on the internet and I put in messy cubby, and this is what it gave me. This is not messy. I don't know what. So imagine it's messy. I don't know what messy cubby this is, but imagine there's a jacket on the floor, a book bag on the floor, right? And there's a child there that I will pick on Marnie. Marnie comes in every morning and she puts her jacket on the floor and she throws her book bag on the floor and she goes in. I want you to think about what you would say or what you would have a teacher say to a child like that. And you could put it in the chat or feel free to unmute. Marty's still not over the fact how organized it is. Think about what you would say or you would tell a teacher to say. I'm doing wait time right now. Marnie, what would you say to a child?
Oh goodness, let's see. I taught high school, so we didn't have cubbies, but maybe just ask like, why are you putting that jacket on the floor instead of in the cubby?
So it could be a question. Jerry has also asked the question, is this jacket yours, right? Like to kind of get them to just think about it. Some teachers might just say, pick up your jacket, right? And some teachers might say, like, what could you be doing? And so there's so many different things that we can say to shape children's behavior. We have to give teachers a way of understanding the types of categorizing the different types of responses, or else it could be anything. Today we're going to talk about 3 R's of teacher language that help shape this type of conversation around behavior: reinforcing language, reminding language, and redirecting language. And when you give teachers a framework for language, they're able to kind of think about it and ask themselves which one they can utilize at that point. Let's go over each one. Reminding language is just that. I'm going to remind you. I'm going to remind you because I'm going to assume you already knew. And for the most part, children already know. So it is usually used when there's been routines, they've been practiced, right? And it's like, oh Lord, why is this child still doing this, right? That is the time that you use it, right? Or it could be used academically. You know, that's the child that sometimes says, I don't know, right? Without them stopping to think. So in this example, reminding language sounds like this. Where do you think your jacket should go? I'm not gonna even say 9 out of 10 times, 10 times, 10 out of 10 times, the child knows where it goes, right? They know where it goes, but it gets them to think about it. And it gets them to stop and think about it. Sometimes it's even like, what's next? What are we doing next? Because they always want to know what they're doing next. How could you find out, right? Oh, I could look at the schedule. Okay. My pencil is broken. What do you think you can do? I can go sharpen it. Hopefully that's the answer, right? because we sometimes set up children to kind of always give them the answer, or always say like, go sharpen your pencil, right? We have to ask them to ask themselves first. And so by using reminding language, they're asking themselves. I used to have a rule in the classroom that was 3 before me, right? And some people use this rule about you have to ask another classmate before you ask me, right? But 3 before me actually was, you have to ask yourself before you ask me, before you ask somebody else. And that was really like for children, it was very difficult, right? I knew sometimes they would come up to me for help and they would say like, my pencil's broken. And I would say, did you ask yourself what to do first? What would you do? I will go sharpen it, or I will go get another pencil. And it teaches them to be problem solvers instead of always holding their hand and then giving them the answer. The other form of language is reinforcing language. You're going to reinforce something that you want them to do, and you're going to use specific language to do that. Let's forget I love and I like from our vocabulary. They're not there for you to love it. You're not an art critic. You're not there you're not there to judge. You're not there to be like, every time they do something, you're like 9.5. That they're not there for you to love things. We know you love and you like it, but that's not going to help them learn. Okay, because this is a picture of something that my daughter showed my husband. My husband's not an educator, and she drew it and she showed it to him. And she shows it to him. She's 4 years old, and he says, "Oh, I love it. It's so nice. It's so." First of all, it's not that nice. Calm down, right? Like we can't keep. You love and you like everything. They see right through you. Second of all, she's like, "Oh, thanks," right? What we also breed is children, and this is research, that they always want your approval, right? They're gonna get to a point where there's gonna be children, and you might already have that. They're gonna go up to you, they're gonna show you something, and you're gonna say something, and they're gonna, do you like it? Do you like it? Right? Because they're so used to that being the, I come to you, you approve, I go back and do my business, right? No matter what it is that I show you. And even if you approve, even if you do like it, even if it is amazing, it doesn't show them what it is that they did that they can repeat. So reinforcing language you could say, oh, that's nice. And then when I went up to my child, I said, I noticed that when you drew Baba, you labeled him, right? There's a word that says Baba next to it. Oh, that really helps me know who's in the picture. She's like, yeah, I labeled him. And I was like, oh, do you label people when you draw them so you could know who they are? She's like, yeah, I like putting she didn't do that before. I like putting their names next to them. And now she got into the habit of labeling, right? Which is, is the early stages of writing. She wouldn't have known that if I just said, oh, I like that. I like what you did. You like what I did what? So observing specific behavior, and it could be for behavior management, and it doesn't have to be I noticed that you came to the rug after you put away your stuff. You remembered that that's what you do. Oh, I am noticing that when somebody needed help, you went up and did it and helped them with it. And so you're telling them specifically the type of behavior that they're doing, the type of skill that they're using, and the type of something that they can repeat. Do it in something that they can repeat, right? I can't repeat something just by saying you like it. And that is reinforcing language. The other one is redirecting language. Redirecting language is when you need to actually give those really direct language of like, they're not doing what they need to do. And sometimes it's harmful behavior to them or other children. And reminding language is not working, right? At that point, it's not a conversation, and we're going to keep it clear and we're going to keep it brief because we don't want to confuse children and we don't want to add extra words. We say things like, instead of saying, don't sit here, we say, sit here. It's very clear. Instead of saying, one time I said to a child, do you want to sit next to me? And you know what they said to me? Very humbling. They're like, nope, I don't want to sit next to you, right? And so we're going to keep it very, very clear and very, very brief. And that's redirecting language. So instead of, do you want to sit next to me? You tell them, have a seat right here. Okay. We're going to go into teacher language around questions. Early on, Debbie was showing that she asked a question. 33% of teacher language is questions. So it's really, really important. If a third of what teachers are saying are questions, we really need to zoom in on what they're saying. But unfortunately, 66% of those questions are just management questions. And so we want to elevate it into higher order, open-ended questions. So what we notice is that there's a correlation between when teachers don't ask open-ended questions and the amount of teacher talk. What that means is the teachers who tend to do the most talking and don't give children a time to talk are usually asking really closed questions. But you're saying, okay, at least there's the benefit of the teachers are talking and children are hearing rich vocabulary and grammar. Nope. You teachers who are doing most of the talking and asking kind of low level questions usually are just using management language. They're using less complex vocabulary and syntax. They're using less higher order thinking skills. And we tend to see a correlation between children who are exposed to just teachers talking all day and not asking them questions and low SES. With children asking questions, we know that children ask about 100 questions per hour before they go into school, and that decreases to about 2 questions per hour when they get into school. So something is happening where children are not asking as many questions. In fact, children are, the way the teachers are responding could be one of the variables. So one research study that we did at Boston University showed that some teachers were giving children an adequate answer to their questions, and some teachers were giving an inadequate response to their questions. And look at the difference between mid SES and low SES. And inadequate really means they sometimes ignore the child. So, oh, what is that? Oh, we're not doing that right now. Or they completely say something else. What we also want teachers to do is turn the question back. What is that? Oh, what do you think it is? Right? And so we gave teachers a professional development on this, and we taught them how to turn the question back and ask higher order questions in a PD, or in a course as well. When they went back into the classroom, they reverted back into exactly what they were doing before, which even teachers who said, oh, I'm going to ask open-ended questions, I'm going to engage children, the majority of teachers just gave an explanation. So when you say something like, what is that animal? Oh, it's a cat, right? That's just an explanation. I don't turn the question back. I don't say, oh, what do you think it is? I don't say, oh, let's find out together. I don't ask the child a question. So there was this gap between what they knew and what they learned to do and what they were doing in the classroom, which is why we created a platform that made sure that it was really rich with open-ended questions. So I want you to think about the materials that you're having your teachers use. And if you're telling them to use these rich questions in the classroom, you're telling them to have open-ended questions. Look at the materials to see if they're actually giving the teachers these open-ended questions. So one of the things we did was make sure that we're giving teachers these high-level questions to ask with videos that we are engaging to children, right? When we see children talking, they're not talking about the weather, like us, like they're not be like, oh, it's cold outside in Chicago. They want something that is interesting for them to talk about. So the first step is using material that is engaging, that's going to get a conversation going. Don't be surprised if there's not a really deep, rich conversation going about the letter A. It's not that interesting to children, so they're not going to really talk about it. I'm going to show you one of the videos that we developed, and I'm going to show you the support materials that we have that go with it that help elevate that level of conversation. This video is about an octopus that lives in the water and he hides in a coconut, which is pretty interesting.
Coconut octopus. Coconut octopuses are found on the floor of the Pacific and Indian Oceans. The coconut octopus is a cephalopod, which means it has tentacles attached to its large head.
A coconut octopus?
It's not actually a coconut. It's just called that because of how it uses the coconut. In the open water, there aren't a lot of places to hide from predators. So it makes a hiding spot inside a coconut.
Hey, it's using the coconut like a snail shell.
Exactly. It gathers empty coconuts and other shells that have fallen into the water with its tentacles, then buries itself in the sand and uses the shells to hide. But a coconut octopus always leaves its eyes uncovered to keep watch.
Making a home out of a coconut shell? Now I've seen everything.
I mean, when I show this to adults, they want to have that conversation. I showed this to adults at a conference and they were sitting there talking. They're like, what is that coconut even doing underneath the water? Like, how does it even get a coconut under the water? And talking about what they knew about an octopus and how it camouflages. And so it elevates that level of conversation. But we don't leave it to chance. We give teachers specific questions. So all of the things that I talked about, we unpacked those components before about teacher and language. Instead of telling them to use that language, we give them a specific guide that they can use that is connected to that language specifically. So instead of telling them ask open-ended questions, we give them open-ended questions. Instead of telling teachers access a child's prior knowledge and build on it, we do that specifically. So the important thing is looking deeper into your material and asking yourself, are you giving teachers materials that actually support teacher-child conversation in the classroom? With that, we also wanted to make sure that we were meeting diverse learning needs. A lot of children are not talking in the classroom because they don't understand what's happening. I was an English language learner myself. And so even though I love talking now, I didn't say anything because I didn't know what was going on. And so in order to do that, the same video that I just showed you, the coconut octopus video, is available also in
不是长在叶子里的章鱼。
Mandarin. We actually added Mandarin because of our partnerships in California as well. So it was a highly requested language.
Lo que significa que tiene tentáculos unidos a su gran cabeza.
And Spanish. Because even if the child's still learning English, we wanted to make sure that they're still hearing rich vocabulary, rich syntax, that they're able to participate in that conversation in the classroom. And so having that level of differentiation on a click of a button allows children to be able to join into that conversation. So immediately that child who might not know what that video is about, if the teacher previewed it in a language that they're familiar with, then they're able to jump in. And now they're learning words like coconut and octopus and hide and predator. And so they're listening and they're being part of that conversation. And then the teacher is scaffolding that learning with the questions that we give her. Not only that, we looked into research that says, well, what questions are parents asking children? We always tell parents to talk to children. We care a lot about family engagement, but we wanted to give families specific questions that they would ask a child. So we're able to, at a click of a button, a child or a teacher is able to send out specific questions to parents on videos that they're watching. So here is a child watching videos about inventions. So instead of saying to the parent, talk to your child about inventions. Okay, what do I say? What do I say to them? Oh, today we're learning about inventions. So what do I do? What do I say? The parent gets a notification, and instead of overwhelming them with an arts and craft project or a research project or anything like that, we focus specifically on questions that they can ask. So we give them 2 open-ended questions, and this is coming from research that stemmed from how we want parents to talk to their children about books. When children were sent home with specific questions in books, parents were more likely to talk and engage. And so children were hearing more words, they were hearing deeper levels of conversations with their parents, and their parents just seemed like they were contributing more. They felt like they were more equipped to do that. And so we do the same thing, but with video content. So parents are able to watch the same video, even if it's not with the same child at the same time. Our videos are under 2 minutes long, and then they elevate that level of conversation. And going back to that graphic earlier that I showed you, if you increase teacher-child or adult-child talk, you are cultivating their language development, their cognitive development, their social and emotional development. And so you have that wide benefit that you have by just talking to your child and exposing them to multiple conversations. So we'll end it here by listening to that video again that we just saw in the beginning. But now I want you to think about it from the level of the type of conversations that we just heard. As a reminder, we heard about repetition and extension. We heard about teacher parallel, like teacher narrating what she's doing, and self-talk. We heard about different types of questions where teachers reinforce or repeat. And we heard about asking questions that were more higher order beyond just like, what is that? So through that lens, we're able to listen to teacher-child conversation, and we're able to give teachers targeted feedback instead of just saying, well, it's better, you could talk to them better or ask more different questions. We're able to support that because we know of the different components. Let's listen again with that lens.
Oh, is it raining? Is it raining today?
Yeah.
I think it's gonna rain today. I wonder if it's raining now.
No.
No, you don't think so? I think it might be. I think it might be raining. It is raining. She's gonna have some cake. Why are they sad? Are they happy? They should be happy. Now,
And within that short little conversation, again, the second time we heard it, you should have heard that the teacher uses repetition. She repeats a lot what the children said, but then she extends it. She also asks open-ended questions like, why do you think they're sad? Right? But you also might hear some feedback you might give the teacher, like increasing wait time, right? Is something that a lot of teachers are working on, or extending the language more, or using richer vocabulary, or pointing, or giving a child some more. When the child talks, she only talks in like one or two words, giving child more wait time too, in order to increase that what the child is saying. So when we are able to kind of pinpoint the type of conversations we want teachers to have with children, we're able to give them and support them in the different level of way. So I wanted to make sure to keep, I know everybody's busy, kept it short. I was telling, when we were here, I was like, I'm going to keep it short, and it's nighttime for me here. I'm on the East Coast. So I want to thank you. And this is just a little tidbit of some of the things that we do to support teacher-child talk. I would love if you, followed me on LinkedIn. I'm always posting resources and some things that we're working on. But also here is Marnie to talk a little bit, just one more minute or so, about some of the things that I mentioned here, if you would like to dig deeper into it and learn more.
Hey everyone, I'm Marnie. I'm the sales coordinator at MarcoPolo, and thank you again for being here with us tonight. So Nermeen talked a lot about like different ways to extend that teacher-child talk and different strategies. And I know like when I was teaching, it was always like, okay, that's really helpful, and like now knowing to do it, but also like having, Nermeen also mentioned having those resources that really help educators to actually do that. And so that's, what we do at MarcoPolo is we are, oh, thank you. We are working to support Head Start goals through enhancing teacher practices with the largest catalog of early childhood educational videos and resources. So Nermeen showed you some of those examples of our videos to really get kids excited and curious about learning. And then also those resources to extend learning outside of the video, really giving examples for teachers of some of those questions that they can use to extend learning. We also, Nermeen showed you some of our videos to serve diverse learners. And so having that content in Spanish, English, Mandarin, Chinese, and modified really helps a variety of learners to learn and access the content, and also giving teachers those tools on how to reach a variety of learners. And support transitioning to kindergarten and building early literacy, math, and foundational skills. So we do have to contextualize learning games and activities that really help with developing those skills that are important for kindergarten and beyond. And lastly, with our product, MarcoPolo for Families, we strengthen school-to-home connection and increase family engagement. And we know that's very vital to Head Start and other early childhood communities. So these are just some of the resources that MarcoPolo for Educators and MarcoPolo for Families has. And we also know that you're using class, and we actually have a full alignment to class, and we can share that with you as well on how MarcoPolo for Educators can help support with that, as well as Head Start framework. So if you want to learn more, please feel free to take a picture of this slide for our director of sales, and you can reach out and we can actually just like share with you more about the product. Again, we know that time is valuable and it's nighttime for many of you, including me, but then we can give you more of like a demo and really show you the different pieces of the product and learn maybe how it could support some of your individualized goals.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. I hope we've given you some things to talk about and to listen to the next time you're in the classroom. And we thank you for coming. And good late afternoon and good night and good day to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much, Nermeen and Marnie and Caroline. It was really great to hear all this information. Missy even she direct messaged me and said all the information was super useful. And so again, this recording will be published on our YouTube page, and then I will go ahead and share the link out through our newsletter. I'm gonna go ahead and put my email into the chat. So if you guys didn't get, Caroline's email here or want Nermeen or Marnie's contact, I would be more than happy to send it over to you. And so again, thank you for joining us, and I hope everyone has a good afternoon and good night. Bye, everyone.
Bye.